we'll start with this. Savannah Marshall versus Femke Hermans title clash has been moved to April 2nd.
This will be happening in Newcastle.
What happened to the old one?
What old one?
This is in Newcastle. Where's the old one?
Are you taking the piss?
That's gross.
Savannah, the silent assassin, Marshall's defense of a WBO middleweight title against former WBO champion Femke Hermans has moved to Saturday, April 2nd, and will headline an all-action event airing live and exclusively in the UK on Sky Sports. The show, previously scheduled for March, will be a co-promotion with Wasserman Boxing and take place at Newcastle Utilita Arena, which in October hosted Marshall's stunning second-round stoppage of Lolita Musea. That win maintained Marshall's undefeated record, extended her run of stoppage wins to 7, and kept the WBO championship belt around her waist. Savannah Marshall must now ensure that she defeats the dangerous Hermans, the current EBU European female champion, to set up one of the most long-awaited showdowns in recent memory and the biggest fight in the history of women's professional boxing. I think that claim is subject to debate. Belgium's Hermans is tough and experienced, an operator who previously took Shields to distance when she challenged her for the unified WBA, WBC, and IBF titles in 2018, and will be hoping to secure a rematch if she can beat Marshall in Newcastle. I'm really happy to be going back to Newcastle Utilita Arena after the amazing reception I received there the last time. Femke is a very tough girl, and it's going to be a hard night's work, but I'm really looking forward to putting on a show. I'm sorry to anyone who has been inconvenienced by the date change, but I hope everyone who wants to be there can still be there. I really can't wait, said Marshall.
Oh, yeah, she blew the roof off that thing the last time.
She took out Lolita Musea in spectacular fashion. I think a similar fate awaits Femke Hermans, who doesn't have the kind of ceiling that Savannah Marshall exhibits. In truth, Femke Hermans isn't really in Clarissa Shields' league, common opponent between her and Savannah, or Savannah Marshall's league for that matter. I think she's slow. I think she's easy to hit.
I think Savannah's gonna knock her out.
I mean, at minimum, the logical choice is Savannah Marshall to win on points, but given Femke Hermans' traits as a fighter, the fact that she's got slow feet, slow hands, leaky defense, it's safe to say that Savannah Marshall, the ambidextrous switch hitter,
that girl's got a lot of ways of landing a punch.
A height advantage, a reach advantage, fighting out of either the orthodox or southpaw stances, Savannah Marshall has a lot of ways of delivering that trademark power of hers, and rest assured, the power is real. It's just a question of delivering it. Delivering that power to Femke Hermans is a much easier proposition than delivering that power to, say, a Clarissa Shields. This is a prelude to that fight, after all.
This is an appetizer is what this is.
Femke Hermans sports a professional record of 12 wins, 3 losses, and she's never been stopped.
I think Savannah at minimum can beat Femke on points, but stopping her would be a statement.
Because Femke's actually been in there with a very statuesque, hard-punching Aline Cedar-Rose of Sweden. She's been in there with New York's own Alicia Napoleon, former WBA super middleweight champion, and she's been in there with Clarissa Shields. She went the distance with all of these fighters in spite of losing those fights. If she goes in there with Savannah and she don't make it out of that fight on her feet,
or get stopped on her feet, that's really saying something about Savannah's power.
On that same card, you're going to see the Albanian king who campaigns at welterweight, Florian Marku. You're going to see Nathan Gorman, former Queensbury alum. Nathan Gorman used to fight under Frank Warren. Now he's over there at Sky and Boxer.
It's a good little afternoon card for the folks here stateside.
Though you have to wonder if the broadcast itself is going to be made available to the people here stateside by way of ESPN Plus, or will we have to pay-per-view on Fight TV? You know, not all of those Sky and Boxer cards, not all of them end up on ESPN Plus. Eubank versus Williams didn't.
But Amir Khan versus Cal Brock did.
People over there at ESPN seem to be a bit judicious which cards by way of Sky and Boxer they decide to pick up. There is a question as to whether or not they'll decide to pick this one up. I don't anticipate that Savannah Marshall should have too many problems with Femke Hermans. I think she beats her in most, if not every single area. So long as she doesn't look past her and stays on her game. Lest we forget, there's a lot on the line here. It's not just about beating Femke Hermans, successfully defending the WBO title. It's not just about that. It's about looking good doing it in style to continue to raise her own profile amongst the fight fans over there in Newcastle. And, you know, making it to that Shields fight. That's what it's all about at this point for Savannah. Clarissa has taken care of her business. Savannah must now take care of hers.
Sky Sports is rolling out their schedule looking to give Eddie Hearn a run for his money.
They're trying to make his job a little bit harder, and that's understandable. That's the byproduct of a competitive market, completing platforms. But as far as the fight fans and as far as fight fans are concerned, it makes for great content because everyone is forced to step up their game.
I don't mind that one bit.
In heavyweight news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Eddie Hearn has insisted that Dillian Whyte will attend the press conference for the Tyson Fury fight. Of course he'll go to a press conference, but in the right manner, professionally. Whyte's not going to hop on a rainy airplane and get COVID. Treat him with respect. And, there's been some speculation as to whether or not Dillian Whyte will participate in this fight's promotion. That debate was really started due to Dillian Whyte's uncharacteristic silence as of late. Silence that he has now broken by way of his own social media. Some people attributed the uncharacteristic silence of Dillian Whyte, who's normally never at a loss for words when it comes to his contemporaries, let alone Tyson Fury. Some people attributed that silence to the arbitration situation he's got going on with the WBC. Don't want to say too much. You don't want to say too much of anything. Others attributed the silence to Dillian Whyte potentially shrinking at, finally getting a crack at Tyson Fury, that he's had a lot to say over the years, and now he's at a loss for words. Maybe he never wanted this fight altogether.
That's how Tyson Fury's fans felt about it.
They felt Dillian Whyte was about to bottle it. They felt that Dillian Whyte wasn't going to sign a contract, wasn't going to take this fight. That's how they characterized his uncharacteristic silence. I guess time has proven them wrong, because he has since submitted the contract, and for all intents and purposes, based on reports.
Showtime, Pepe.
So now that the contracts are signed, maybe Dillian Whyte will be a little bit more vocal, break that uncharacteristic silence. As this is going on, this news is breaking. Tyson Fury has announced that he'll be going into radio silence, social media silence, as it were, a social media blackout. He's going to let his team handle all of his social media accounts moving forward to direct his focus on the Dillian Whyte fight. He made that announcement earlier today.
You gotta wonder if Dillian Whyte's silence wasn't a sign of Dillian Whyte soul-searching.
As to whether or not he liked the terms and conditions for this match, as to whether or not he'd take this fight under these circumstances, just something to think about. Maybe it's much ado of nothing. Maybe the uncharacteristic silence is directly related to the arbitration situation he's got going on. There have been a lot of people out there, mostly Tyson Fury fans, his supporters, demanding that Dillian Whyte help Bob Arum, Frank Warren, and Tyson Fury sell this fight. I've seen these people. I don't know what their stake in it really is, why they care so much as to whether or not Dillian Whyte is going to help these boys turn over a profit on this thing, when
what difference does it make to them?
Whether or not he decides to bring the Scooby Snacks in this dog and pony show. What do they care? If Dillian Whyte don't stand to make nothing extra off of the pay-per-view's potential upside, then what fucking difference does it make to him whether or not it does good business or bad business? All he's going to get is his guarantee anyway, ain't he?
It all depends on what's in the contract anyway.
What's in the fine print as to whether or not he must participate in promotion for this fight, and to what extent. It all boils down to the legalese of it. What's in the contract, what's in the fine print. I don't think it's in there that Dillian Whyte's got to...
I mean, if there's something in there, I don't think it extends to more than him just having to show up.
He's probably got to show up the same way Deontay Wilder had to show up for those press conferences in the third fight with Tyson Fury, though you'll notice that Deontay Wilder didn't say much at those press conferences. He didn't actually do much to help sell the fight and promote it. He went into radio silence.
Yeah, Tyson Fury says he's going into radio silence now.
You wonder if Tyson Fury's fans are going to jump to the same conclusions and make the same assumptions about Tyson Fury's radio silence that they've been making about Dillian Whyte's radio silence.
Of course not.
A bunch of fucking hypocrites, just like Tyson Fury, but it's still... Dillian Whyte's radio silence is what sparked these questions and sparked this entire debate as to whether or not he's obligated to help promote the fight, when the whole time he's been in this radio silence, the contracts weren't even signed anyway. There wasn't yet a fight to promote, but now that the contracts are signed, and depending what legalese is in those contracts, what's in the fine print, he probably does have to show up to a couple of press conferences.
Yeah, maybe he does, but he ain't got to be your Huckleberry.
As if he even has to show up. It's funny how important this particular talking point has become to the Fury faction of fight fans, Fury supporters. They spent all this time saying that Dillian Whyte is overvaluing himself, yet now they find it so important that he helped Tyson Fury, Frank Warren, and Bob Arum sell this fight.
I said it before and I'll say it again. They got a lot riding on this thing. Dillian don't.
In terms of finance, the financial risks associated with this fight that has now become a lot more expensive than it originally was when they first priced this thing. They first priced this thing at around, I don't know, $20, $25 million pot. Now they're in a hole about $41 million. They need this thing to sell.
In a nutshell, the financial risks have gone up because this is a bigger pot.
And the only reason this pot got bigger is because it went to a purse bid, and they had to ensure that they beat out Mr. Eddie Hearn. They had to ensure that they placed the winning bid, thereby raising the stakes and the financial risk to themselves, because they've got the rights for the fight, they did, but now the fight's a lot more expensive to put on.
Some people think Fury's rattled by all this stuff.
The frequency of uploads he's made to his own social media accounts, there are people out there that feel Tyson Fury is once again cracking under pressure, the way he did ahead of what was supposed to be the Vladimir Klitschko rematch, the rematch that he bailed on because he was going through his mental health.
Well, it's a story, ain't it? He cracked under pressure as a result of his mental health issues.
Because Tyson Fury has mental health problems. Yet, if you ask his fans, he's the most mentally strong guy they've ever seen. They can't imagine that Tyson Fury might be rattled by something or someone, and yet his whole
mental health stuff, you forgot about that already?
He beats Vladimir Klitschko, goes on a cocaine binge, has a nervous breakdown, and you're saying it's outside the realm of possibility that his domestic rival, who's been waiting to get him in the ring for years, you're saying it's outside the realm of possibility that Tyson Fury might be a little bit rattled by all of this.
I don't care either way. I just want to see the fight.
Oh, the idea that Tyson Fury is too mentally strong to be rattled by anything or anyone, given his history and what's supposed to be his triumphant return to boxing, it's safe to say that, well, he's been rattled before.
And that was against the guy that he beat already, Vladimir Klitschko.
I'm looking forward to April 23rd. Finally, in welterweight news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Eddie Hearn on Kell Brock's technical knockout of Amir Khan over 6 rounds. He said, watching the fight, I had a couple of thoughts. This would have been such an unbelievable fight in their primes. It was still exciting. Massive props to Khan because he was absolutely shot to pieces. He wouldn't give up. And, you know, I could have swore I heard Eddie Hearn saying that he wasn't going to stay up for this thing, but come on.
Come on.
There ain't a boxing fan in the whole of the United Kingdom that didn't want to know how this saga was going to end. How after all these years,
everybody wanted to know how this was going to end.
Amir Khan seemed all but a shot fighter to me. A shot fighter who had nothing else left to give the sport, but saw a financial opportunity in at least attempting to, settle the score with his domestic rival, Kell Brock. The performance that he put on was no performance at all. He was hurt in the very first round. It's a wonder that the fight lasted as long as it did, since Amir Khan always seemed one punch away from being taken out. He didn't quit, you know, he didn't give up. But it was clear that Amir Khan, he had nothing left. He's circling the drain. He's circling retirement. I think it'll only be a matter of time before an official announcement is made. Comes to Kell Brock. Eddie Hearn said, Kell Brook versus Benn is a brilliant fight. I said it to Kell last night. Why would you even think about fighting Chris Eubank Jr., a middleweight, when you can fight a huge welterweight fight versus Benn?
I understand that Eddie Hearn has Matchroom's interests in mind when he says that, but he makes a valid point.
Listen, there's people out there, real sentimental people. They want to see Kell Brook retire now. They want him to end his career on a high, this being arguably the biggest win of his entire boxing career, bigger even than when he traveled to America to pry away the red belt from Sean Porter, all those years ago. This victory over his domestic rival, Amir Khan, in some ways can be seen as an even bigger victory than that one was, than any victory in Kell Brook's career, really, because this indicates that the time wasn't spent in vain pursuing that Amir Khan fight, that it wasn't for nothing. All those years he chased that guy. He finally got him. He got that fucking guy.
He can retire off of that.
Concern for the health and well-being of Kell Brock moving forward, because he looked great this past weekend, but he looked the way that he looked against a shot fighter. And looking great against a shot fighter,
It was a very big win for Kell Brook, but you could also categorize it as a tune-up fight for Kell Brook.
the marquee value in association with Khan versus Brook doesn't take away from the fact that Amir Khan was a very inactive fighter. So was Kell Brook. It seems that Brook has a lot more in the tank left than Amir Khan, but Amir Khan had nothing left in the tank. Thus,
It was a big payday for both boys, but for Kell, it was kind of a tune-up fight.
well, it didn't seem that way going into the fight. I understand that, but that's why hindsight is 20/20, because once it's all over and the smoke settles, you got a better picture of what the hell was going on there. And we see that today's Amir Khan is little more than cannon fodder for any guy that really wants it. Kell Brook really wanted it. The question is, how much does Kell have left in the tank? I don't think that today's Kell Brook should make very many, if any, weight concessions to these young guys that want a piece of him, Conor Benn included. I think if Conor Benn wants anything to do with Kell Brook in the near future, Kell Brook must consider his own health and well-being. If he can make 150, 151 comfortably and still feel strong, still feel able-bodied, then he should do so. But he shouldn't spend any more of himself.
Well, I don't think he should cut down to 147.
No, I don't. For Conor Benn or anyone else, I think that Kell's optimal weight to get just a little bit more life, just a little more life out of his career would have to be somewhere between 150 and 154 pounds. I think that's the optimal weight for today's Kell Brook. And at that weight, the fight with Conor Benn is a lot more interesting. I mean, come on, Conor's a young guy. He's 25 years old. Going up a couple of pounds, that ain't the end of the world. You want to make a marquee event, a big marquee attraction, you got to make a couple of sacrifices. Conor Benn should make some sacrifices. Kell Brook has sacrificed enough.
Don't you remember when Floyd was pursuing Oscar? To get him, he fought Oscar at Oscar's weight.
And before we start the hair splitting and the belly ache, and I'm not implying that Kell Brook is the same caliber of fighter that Oscar De La Hoya was. What I'm saying is that
the young up-and-comer sometimes has to make sacrifices to launch their career.
Take it to the next stage. That's what Floyd Mayweather Jr. did, acquiescing to Oscar De La Hoya's demands. Conor Benn is young enough that he can go up there, pack on a couple of pounds, take on Kell Brook in the junior middleweight division, and still...
He could always go back down to 147. He's young enough.
It's not like these guys are fighting for a belt or anything. It's not like there'd be a world title on the line. For Conor Benn, at this point, a guy like Kell Brook is just what the doctor ordered. And for Kell Brook, this is the ideal fight since he insists on sticking around. He said it himself. He's not retiring. There's still big fights to be made. This is one of them.
Well, you might have your reservations about what Kell should do right now.
Boxing fans can sometimes be sentimental. Some of them might want to see Kell Brook sail off into the sunset now, retire off this big win over his domestic rival. I understand these fans. I understand these people, but that's not what Kell is doing. Not according to Kell.
Are you going to judge me because of what he's doing?
It's not my fault. I'm just telling you. The guy's not retiring. He's saying he's going to stick around. So if he's going to stick around, the best bang for his buck fight would be the Conor Benn fight. He wouldn't be running the same risks he'd be running with Chris Eubank Jr. up there at middleweight.
I like Brook versus Benn at junior middleweight.
I like that fight, even if you don't.